All right. Oh my God, it looks like we're live. Well, here we are. Here we are. And goodness gracious. Well, we don't have anybody on yet, but it's all good. I want to thank everybody for being slightly patient with that. It was a little bit of technical difficulties as we were trying to figure this all out, but we got it. 9 minutes in, I guess that's not too terrible. So, thank you everyone for being here. And if you're chiming in, we have comments on here, so definitely want this to be as interactive as we possibly can. But basically what I wanted to do, I'm Josh, the founder of Mountain Biking Life. And what I wanted to do was, this has been something I've been wanting to do for a while. And one of the things about Mountain Biking Life and just like the background of the brand has been really not mattering how often you ride, but you ride for a specific reason. You ride because you love the hell out of it, but you have a reason for it. We ride as often as we can, whether it's once a month or every week. We're not the pros. We're the moms, the dads, the sisters, brothers. We got life and work, and but we just enjoy the hell out of riding. So the intention with the podcast is actually to kind of share some stories about people who ride mountain bikes, the sport that we love so much, that I love so much. And what I wanted to do is really share those stories as best as I possibly can, shine light to it, because within those stories, there's a lot of really, I think the mountain biking community is awesome. I've only met great people, but there's a story behind how we got to where we're at. And there's a lot of inspiration out there, and I want to share that. So without, going off with the first podcast, even though we're behind here, going off with a bang, I met this gentleman a little over a year ago, and I've been inspired by him as an individual. We've hung out a little bit, which we'll talk about. And he's got an incredible story, and I'm just going to bring him on so we can start chatting and see where this goes. But let's have some fun. So I'm going to bring on Mr. Phil Hashem here. And what's up, brother? How you doing?
How you doing, my man? Good to be on.
I'm glad to have you here. Thank you for being my first guest. It's an honor, my friend. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. It's good being on, and it's great being the first guest, but you also got to go through the technical difficulties at the same time and work through the kinks, right? So hopefully we didn't lose too many people.
They'll catch us on the flip side. It's all right. It's all good. It's all love. Right on, man. Well, to give people a little bit of a backstory, you and I met, we met at the Whiskey Off-Road in Prescott. Well, no. It was the Whiskey Off-Road in Prescott, which is a great event, is in April every year, and put on a great ride. But I knew of you. I saw you at the event, but I just didn't have an opportunity. You were out riding, and I thought it was super dope because it was up there with Truman and High Country, right? You were up there, and then you guys did the race together, and Truman followed you. Is that right?
That's right, man. That was a crazy trail. But yeah, High Country, me and Truman got through it. A lot of fun, a lot of crazy stuff. Almost tumbled down that big hill with that like 12 inches of single track with a 33-inch wide trike, but got through it, knocked it out. It was like 17 or 20 miles by the end, but it was pretty sick.
Yeah, that's awesome. How many, now what people may or may not have probably recognized if they were watching the little reel that I posted the other day is that you're on a special bike, and you're on a lasher that allows you, that's obviously different than an able-bodied individual, but you're an adaptive rider, and you have a special bike that allows you to get out and do those things, which is pretty badass, which is pretty cool, huh?
It's freedom, man. So we call it Freedom Rider. It's like a big wheel looking thing. If you've never seen one, it's actually up here in the pic of me jumping it right there. But it's a front wheel drive. You crank with your arms. You got a pedal assist. You got a 1,000-watt motor on there, full suspension. It's just, it's a mountain bike, man. It's crazy. The only difference is it's on 3 wheels. So you got to be mindful of different things like camber and slope and squeeze points and stuff. But I mean, the thing shreds, man. I mean, you go as fast as you possibly can on that thing. I've taken it up to 30 plus miles, crazy all tracks. I mean, me and you hit up that, what was that, garden party up in Prescott, rock crawling around on that thing. So you know what it's capable of, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So you and I, and I'll pull up your Instagram, and we'll kind of show pictures of that a little bit more, so people can get a little bit closer look at it. Those that don't know who you are and what you do. But I knew of you then, and I talked to Truman the next day, and I actually was able to get onto one of the bikes, and I was like, "This is incredible! Like just how cool it is." And I was like, this brings people into the opportunity of what I get to experience when I go out and ride. And those people that aren't necessarily capable to ride just a stand-up bike, which I thought was super dope. But anyway, like, you and I have been kind of following each other a little bit, and I had seen you, and I knew you were in Phoenix, so I wanted to touch base with you, and gratefully we live probably 5 miles from each other, and you were down to hook up a ride and go up to Apache Wash and do a quick rip, and and then go to breakfast after that, and then I got to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, man, that's my trail. I love that trail. Anytime I'm trying something new on the bike, I'm hitting that one up, so it's always a fun one to go on. But yeah, man, it was great connecting in the beginning, and you know, it's just been fun, man. Just meeting with so many people here in AZ, and we got a great mountain biking community, man. So I'm super stoked all the time. You know, going up there when we went to the tour of the White Mountains over there with Todd and Epic. You know, it's pretty cool. We've been putting some events on with them. Me and High Country, we got a race coming up there in a month. Tour of the White Mountains, so stay tuned for that, or come join us. Even better.
Yeah, which we got to catch back up about the plans that we were talking about. So right on. Well, I think I want to show your bike real quick, so I'm going to try to pull that up here real quick. But I think it's pretty badass as far as if nobody's seen these lashers before, it's pretty damn incredible. Hopefully you guys can see this. Cool. But obviously you are unafraid on that thing. Some of the pictures on these things, it's like, holy shit. Like, you are just flying, bro.
Yep. No, I mean that you know, Sedona was a fun bike park. That's what that video is right here. So I mean, you know, that thing shreds. I mean, you could see it. I mean, you'll rock crawl through this thing, and you know, be able to do jumps on it, and you know, get air, and it's just, I mean, you're flying. I mean, it's fun. You know, you do technical stuff. You could do you know, camber, berms, speed trails, you know, and whatever you want to do, man. You know, scenic rides with your friends, just get you out there. But I love it, man. I mean, it's been life changing. This last had it for about 2.5 years now, coming in on it, and it's just been an incredible journey, man. You know, I basically sparked a renaissance in my life, taking it up to about 20 different states. You know, my goal is to hit all 50 eventually, but 20 in a year with 6 different countries. I mean, it's been a heck of a year, man. So, I mean, I'm actually resting up. You know, it's been nice to rest up the last month that I've been home.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's pretty incredible that you are just out there having a blast. Yeah, dude, I was like, where in the world is Phil? Like, every time I go onto Instagram, man, like, you are all over the place.
Yeah, man, we took it. That one video over there is we took it to a car show. You know, I mean, just we were that one over there in the top left. The that's just like, you know, I mean, that's just the fun one right above that one. That's just
right above that one.
You know, I've taken it to like to Mardi Gras and stuff. I mean, I've taken it to Santa Monica Pier. You know, you know, this is a car show. You know, pulling my girlfriend Alex behind me in her chair, and we're just rolling through like a car show, as you can see right there, dapping up with people. So It's like a mobility device. It's not just a mountain bike, right? I got my cat trying to jump all over me now. Come on, Pop. But no, that thing's pretty sick, man. I mean, it's just mobility device. It's a mountain bike. It's a connector. More than anything, it's a connector. To get you outdoors into the community, into the trails, getting out there, exercising, traveling, meeting new people, being a part of the community, and just living life. So I mean, that's why I became an AMTB mountain bike instructor, and with High Country, and we try to get people out on trails. I mean, it's super hot right now, so we're still doing rides just up in Flagstaff. But the cool thing about High Country is we go all over pretty much Arizona, like Sedona, Flagstaff rides, Prescott, Phoenix when it's not a furnace out here. But that was just kind of my way of trying to share my love with the community and getting people out off the couch, and people that might have been stuck at home for whatever reason, if it's the disability, post-COVID stuff. It helps get your head right, help get my head right, help me get a good jump start on things, and anything I can do to give back. That's what the group rides and the private lessons are about with High Country. And everyone I've taken out on rides, I mean, they love it, and we'll help you get grants and stuff like that. I write rec letters for people to get the grants necessary to purchase these bikes, because they're not cheap, man. They're $20K, and they're even more than $20K now, post inflation with Corona. So
Right.
It's worth every penny, man. I mean, if there's any investment in my life that I don't regret whatsoever, it's this.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see that it just shows up in all of your reels, man. And every time that you and I have gotten together and just chatted, whether it's at an event where we go out and ride, or it was breakfast that day, it was just I could really, really tell that you love the hell out of that bike, and more importantly, what it's been able to give to you, I think is huge. And then it shows up every single time I see you on a reel, which which I'm glad you're doing, because I get to see that, and it makes me happy. One, to see other people riding and just enjoying the hell out of it. So I think it's really, really cool. And so I just want to commend you for that. And I think, in general, just keep doing it, man. Like, especially sharing, I think, is the key factor there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it's, I enjoy, I mean, it's a lot of work. I've been taking some time off here the last month, after all the travels, just trying to recharge the batteries. But it's something, when you love something, it's a lot easier to do, even though it is a lot of work. It's more enjoyable. So it's just the love that I have. I did some hip hop back in the day, making beats, editing, songs and stuff like that. So it's not too far of a jump, to be doing some reels, adding music to that. So it's something I enjoyed. I've always done stuff like that my whole life.
So let's go back, because that's obviously an amazing thing, and a lot of people probably don't know about. So when was that? And tell us a little bit about that, and what got you in, like, when were you doing it, and what the hell got you into it, and why did you love it so much? And what was your name?
So my name, I mean, Philly Hash, of course. I go by Phil Hashem, so Philly Hash. So, that was in my younger days, man. That was about 11 years ago now, man. So it's been a minute for sure. So don't ask me to freestyle or anything, because it's been a decade. But it's just the way that started. When I was 16, I'm 38 now. I broke my neck, so I was paralyzed from the neck down. That's why I ride the adaptive mountain bike. But music for me, so I was in a band before that, and I played guitar. I was the lead singer. We had shows, a lot of house parties at that time when, in high school. So, I mean, it was kind of the life. So, when the accident happened, that kind of abruptly stopped, because it affected my ability to play guitar. And so, like, hip hop was an easy transition, because with a MIDI keyboard, you could trigger all the sound effects, just with your fingertips on keys, put drums on there, synths, everything. So I was able to make my own beats, but the real draw to that, I mean, I was always musically inclined. My mom's an artist. It's just something that, is a part of things. But, it was also kind of cathartic to kind of like write the lyrics to that, because it helped me through, it's kind of like therapy. It helped me through that time in my life to get all that off my chest that I was experiencing. Like, instead of talking about like, mansions and, scantily clad women jumping around and, like ice on my wrists and all this stuff. Like, I was talking about the struggle and about what I've been through. And, it was cool, man. I met a underground, his name's Justice. He's kind of like the big dude here in Arizona. One time just in the gym. And, a lot of people at that point were like, well, hey, Phil, your stuff's pretty good. Why don't you go perform? Or why don't you put an album out? And at that time, I always kind of made excuses. And I was just like, well, I got a disability. I can't jump around stage and get that crowd hype, blah, 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 just all kinds of stuff. And then when I met this dude in the gym and I told him, I make beats, I rap, he's like, well, let me hear something. And then I showed him something. And ironically, the song I showed him was actually a song called Forgiveness. It was kind of when I was at my rock bottom. It was about God, actually. The irony of all of this. And he really liked it. He's like, dude, we're gonna have like a hip hop competition coming up in a month. Why don't you join? And so that was kind of my shit or get off the pot moment of like, all right, like here's someone like is someone here in AZ that has the chances to put shows on and everything, is giving me an opportunity. It's like, this isn't no longer like, hey, you should do something. It's like, here's something before you. You going to do it or you going to back down for some reasons that, are more or less just fears talking to you. And so, I made a shirt for myself at that point, and on the back of it, I put no excuses. On the front, I put overcome. And I went up on stage and I ran it. And I won that competition, and it was like 500 people, and it was crazy because it's like you got to go up on stage and you got to not forget your lyrics and you got to like stand up and not fall over and all kinds of stuff, right? It was like the meet the big monster moment, right? Like, you're right there. And that was kind of the beginning of like really just the end of that. Like, and the album was called No Excuses. That's what it was. And that was just a message to myself, right? To just like, shut up and put up, right? I mean, like, we all, doesn't matter whether you got a disability or not, we all got fears, we all got anxieties, we all got reasons we make up in our mind why we can't do something. But, the only way you overcome fear is you look it right in the face and you punch it in the mouth. And that's the only way it's going to shut up, right? You got to give it some practical data points of like, oh, you say I can't do it? Well, I just did. So I know I can, right? And that's where that came from. But then I got in an accident. Like I did 6 shows actually in the Valley. I got radio play. I had an album. Like I was 1 song short from an album, and then I shattered my leg to pieces and had to relearn to walk again, which actually took longer than the spinal cord injury. I'm actually a walking quad. If people don't know, I'm a quadriplegic, but I could walk with a couple canes. So lots of different journeys in my life. That was a major one of them. And that kind of like set a foundation for like facing fears and just doing it. So, it was a big part of my life. I have a home studio, the whole deal. So it was a big part of my life for like probably about 10 years or so.
Okay. So about 16 to 26, you were doing that then?
Yeah, about 16 to 27, when I got in that accident and shattered the leg, that's what cut it short, and then I had to kind of focus on rehab. Took a year and a half just for the bones to heal, right? Let alone walking on it. So it was a crazy recovery. It took longer than the spinal cord injury to start walking again. So, and then life happened, I got a job, girlfriend, all that stuff, and just refocused on something else at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
You mind taking us back to what happened that first, because you've had a couple accidents, a couple injuries, right? Like you mind taking us back to like what that first one was and then just kind of take us down the line of kind of where you're at right now?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll try to condense it as much as I can. So we're talking like 22 years. My 22 years is coming up here on September 21st. So
wow.
That's how long it's been. Happened when I was 16. And I was in my buddy's car, and it was raining outside, and just being kids, just being dumb, and we hydroplaned into the other lane in the oncoming traffic, and then we got crunched, man. We got clipped sideways, and the crazy thing about that accident was that was my best friend's car, and I always rode shotgun, and I actually sat in the front that day too. And my buddy who was with us, my other good friend Nick, he was like, "Hey man, let me get shotgun. I'll blaze you up. Something like that." And I'm like, "All right, sure, go ahead, hop in." And I sat in the back, and we're driving, and we're just being dumb, saying careless stuff. We kind of slide out of the street at that point, into the traffic, kind of slide out, and I'm like, man, I don't even care if we crash. And I put my seatbelt on at that point. And as that happened, 10 seconds later, my buddy starts kind of messing with the wheel like this. We lose control, hydroplane in the other lane, get T-boned, and my buddy in the front seat, he died immediately on impact. His severed arm was actually laying on my lap, not bleeding, so I knew he was out. And that would have been me, man. I mean, I sat in the front. I've always sat in the front. I sat in the front that day. And so you never think that being paralyzed is the better choice of the two, but that day it is. God rest his soul. That day it was. And so that was kind of the beginning. At 16 years old, you're a kid, right? You still have your whole life ahead of you. You're just partying, having fun on top of the world. So all of a sudden, like having to learn how to feed yourself, dress yourself, forget about walking. Right? I couldn't even talk at that point. I was paralyzed from the neck down. My diaphragm was paralyzed. So it was the craziest thing you could possibly imagine, and to even have the ability to have gotten the recovery I have now, to be fully independent, have my own home, be able to be traveling the country, riding this bike, and where I'm at right now, it's massive. You would think immediately you'd be grateful, right? But that took practice to get to that point, right? And even when I speak right now, I always talk about viewing the world, with a cup half full instead of cup half empty. But that sort of mindset took time, right? Because initially you're just focusing on what you lost, right? And so it was, especially at that age, why me, all that stuff. So it was crazy, man. I became a philosophy major because of the questions, all that. Went down on a path. I wanted to be a lawyer. Ended up being in sales. I learned sales just by interacting with people, because when you have an injury like that, people help who they like. So you have to learn how to be personable, learn how to communicate, learn how to be able to ask for help. And so that naturally lent itself well into having a career in sales. We were pretty successful, and had my play in the stock market too, man. Learn stocks along the way, learn investing, because I knew it was important to be financially savvy. When you have an injury like that, there's a lot of bills, so you got to learn how to manage money. So that was some of the highlights along the way, man. The mindset took a long time. It took about a good decade to really flip it, right? From negative thinking to positive thinking, and literally rewiring my brain. I'd have a negative thought, I'd force a positive thought, so that those neural connections can feel what it's like to think that way, until it became natural, and then had to change my whole life, the people around my life, not being satisfied with being on disability insurance, but actually going out, getting a job, because, my brain still works, right? So use that to maximize my earnings, right? I don't want to live on $1,000 a month, right? I want to live on the most that I could possibly earn, because of my value as a person, right? And the talents I have. Right. So it was a whole process, man. But those are kind of, to make a 22-year-old story as condensed as possible, those are pretty much the highlights. So, the mindset, sales, investing, the little brief rap career there, and then where we are today with the bike, and trying to give back to my community, and trying to impact trail projects locally in Arizona, and get races up and get people on more bikes.
Yeah. What were some of the things, talking about the mindset? Obviously, you said it took a minute, right? Obviously, there was a lot of hurdles that you were kind of working through.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you said, like, if there was a negative thought, you flipped it and tried to, or were successful at working towards, putting a positive thought in there. However, I personally, in my own life, that's a challenge sometimes. So where did you get that from? Was that something that your parents instilled in you? Was it something that you like deep dove into? Like, how do I get out of this? Like, where did that come from that you learned that?
Community is a super important part. So, I mean, of course, my parents, my friends, I couldn't have done any of this without all the people around me, right? I mean, if we're, I'm just trying to give kind of the surface layer highlights of things, but we really get down into it, it's so important to have a good community of people around you, because when you're down, you got people to just be with you, just talk to, just play a game of chess with you, go have a meal with you, go watch a movie together. Just the presence of another human being is in and of itself healing. So absolutely. I mean, having the support of my parents, my family, my friends, my community, was everything. I know a lot of people don't have that. I know a lot of people don't have a loving mom or father, or their parents aren't alive, or they grew up in a situation where it was toxic, right? So it's, obviously all of our families have their dysfunction, right? But within reason, it was absolutely a part of that. But, I've always been a curious person, that's why I studied philosophy. I always ask questions. I always probe pretty deeply. So, in terms of like what you're talking about, negative to positive thoughts, there's something called neuroplasticity that I believe in, that, is like, your brain is like Play-Doh, it's malleable, even far after it's developed, right, through conditioning. And it's the same idea with a spinal cord injury, right? That's why through repetition, we could create new pathways to create new physical movements. You could do the same thing through thoughts, right? So a negative thought is a system of neurons firing in a particular order. A positive thought has a separate order. So, understanding that when you just actually have that thought, even if you don't initially believe it, you're still practicing those pathways, in the firing, right? They're still actually initiating and engaging. And it becomes easier down the line of doing that a week after week, month after month, to be able to naturally have those thoughts. Now, in addition to that, you have to create the proper surroundings, right? Like the type of people I hung out with, how I took care of my body, the nutrition, going to church, God, having faith is a big part. All those things reinforce, these habits, right? It's not just that in a vacuum, but on its own, that comes from the concept of neuroplasticity, right? You have those patterns firing a certain way over time. You'll begin to condition your brain to be able to fire like that. So,
yeah. I love it. Yeah, I learned that a while ago, and it's pretty incredible that the brain. Once I realized, I'm like, oh, then pretty much anything's possible. What do I want to teach myself? Absolutely. And so Mountain Bike Q&A said, hey, where can we find your songs? And Nathan Rem said, Phil's music can be found if you Google it, Reverb Nation Philly Hash.
Yeah. If you could probably pop the link up there too. Yeah. So I mean, I got like 20 songs on there. So have at it, man. Yeah. If you Google Reverb Nation Philly Hash, it'll take you to the page. I don't know if you could put a link in there, if I can. Is this in the chat? Like the little comments? I mean, I don't know if you can do it, but if you Google it, it'll pop the link up there. You can just copy paste it into the comments and bump it.
But what I love is that, I mean, I'm going to see if I can find it here real quick. Oh, here we go. Reverb Nation. All right, let's see if we can get it up here real quick. I'm gonna put it in the post the comment so people can go check it out. Oh, okay. Let me pull it up here real quick because I want to see this. I want to see what we can do here. Okay. Technical difficulty. Hold on. Switch pages here real quick. Okay. Share screen. Okay. Here we go. Look at that guy.
There it is, man. There's the shirt too that I was talking about. That's the first time I walked in.
EOG.
Oh yeah.
We'll make someone an OG.
Oh, what?
Let's see. Yeah, many years past. Yeah, that seemed way back. Living life, I taste that. Tragedy, I face that. Broken neck, there's hope. Every reason to choke. Life leave you banged up and broken up at that dope. That's half the battle. You go open it. You go face up. You gonna sit back and go soaking it. Yeah, right. Live the fight, don't lose sight. Bloods up, Mike Tyson. Cause
I'm OG, y'all new to the game.
woo! Now that's a sentimental intro. Gotta let your boy paint like Picasso. Yeah, I live my life like a boss though. Put back all the pieces back together like a puzzle.
Oh my! All right. Well, okay. Now you guys got a new playlist. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome, dude. I'm gonna have to go back to that. I'm gonna go back to that.
I haven't heard that in a while, man. That's a good one.
That's awesome.
It's fun.
All right,
man.
cool.
I like challenges, man. You know, whether it's stock, sales, music, the biking thing, you know, it's just, you know, life is short. So, you know, I like to kind of dabble in a lot of things so that, you know, when you're old, if you're privileged enough to get to that point, you know, you could say, hey, you look back and you say, man, I remember that season in life and I remember those challenges and I remember going through this and that, and it keeps it colorful. You know, you got a variety. So, yeah, man, it's, I'm always looking for the new mountain to climb.
Yeah. So, what are you doing? Oh man, I got a couple different questions. So what did you do within sales? I'm just curious. What was that sales position again? Obviously, I know you were doing some trading and stuff like that on a personal level, right?
Yeah.
But what were you doing as far as sales goes?
I mean, it was pretty hardcore sales, man. I mean, it's kind of boiler room sales. It's, you know, it wasn't like, you know, order taking or insurance. I mean, I started out in insurance, you know, late, man. I started out late, like 27 was the first time, because the first decade was just focused on rebuilding my body, right? I went overseas to like Moscow, like, because those Russians go hard, man. So, you know, like we went there, it was like 6-hour therapy sessions per day for like 3 months. So like, you know, I focused on a lot of, you know, learning to walk and maximize what I can the first decade. So I didn't really get into the career world until about 27. That was my first sales job, actually. And it was insurance, right? So I kind of, you know, that was kind of like your basic sales where you kind of learn the game. And then after that, I worked for a company called ZipRecruiter, which is job listings, you know, but like people would like, you know, go on their site and you know, express interest, but then they'd see it cost something and then they'd leave, right? And then I'd have to hit them up and be like, hey man, what's going on? Like, but it's like you actually have intent on that lead, which is all you really need. You just need to know someone's in the market. Now, why they ain't buying, how to convert them? Well, that was my job, is to hit them up and be like, well, look, you got a need. We have a solution. Let's find out what the pain points are, and let's see if we can make a sale. But the whole key for me on sales was all about making a meaningful connection with the clients. People buy from people they like. So, you know, I was all about relationship sales, using humor, connection, you know, less formality, to just have a conversation like we're having right now and see if there's some common ground that makes sense, you know, see if the pain points make sense for the product and the solutions that we have to be able to connect those two together and see if we could help someone. Like you're not going to sell a Ferrari to a monk, right? Because monks don't need Ferraris. So it doesn't matter. You know, you need a need to begin with, but at the same time, if you establish a need, you know what those pain points are and you got a solution, then I think the bridge there is being able to connect with that person on a human level. And that's really what I focused on as far as being able to shine and do well in sales. So it was that sort of type of sales, kind of like, what is it? SaaS. So that kind of like software as a service, ZipRecruiter. I worked for a company called Bold Leads. And then did the stock market thing pretty much from Corona on, which is a crazy roller coaster in and of itself. Took a couple years off, traveled the world, and now I'm kind of back to reality and looking to try to establish myself again back in the sales game.
Right on. Cool. Mountain Bike Q&A wants to know, he goes, one of my wife's best friends is a quad and can't walk. Was wondering what the difference is since you can. Am I describing that a little bit? Yeah,
it makes sense. I mean, every injury is so different. We're talking like hairs, not even millimeters. Like a hair to the left, hair to the right is the difference between being able to walk and not being able to walk. Like you could have 20 quads in a line, right? All have the same exact injury, C5 through C7, right? That was my injury, for example. And every one of those functions are going to be different because picture like a spinal cord, like take this finger. And if there's a bruise on this side versus here or there, there's a different bundle of nerves that go to a different place. And the severity of the bruise is going to determine the severity of the injury and how much recovery you have. And if you completely sever it, well, there's no connection that could be made, right? So those are the people that would have no function from the injury site down, right? It just is what it is. So a lot of it's chance. A lot of it is just the grace of God, to be honest, right? So it's not about how hard you work, right? Christopher Reeves worked his butt off every day in rehab, but he had a severed spinal cord. So he would just never was going to be able to get beyond a certain point because he just doesn't have think of like an iPhone cable. When it's not connected to your phone, it's not charging.
Right. So you're able to walk, obviously, and you walk with a couple canes.
Yep. I was thinking of a rap name being Two Canes for a while, but I thought Philly Hash is more natural.
Philly Hash, a little bit more natural. Yeah. So I've actually seen, you got how much. What does your life look like? Do you feel obviously like, as far as your injury goes, it obviously kind of slows you down a little bit as far as that goes, right? But how are you able to move throughout your day? What's been put into place on your end so that you can do whatever you need to do, as you said earlier, independently as best as you possibly can?
I don't really have any there's I guess a concept called universal design, and for example, Alexa, and hopefully she doesn't respond, but that is a concept within universal design. You could have bots like Alexa turning the lights on. Alexa, stop. I'm just gonna call her A. So you could have bots like that turning the lights on and off for you, or air conditioners, temperature for that. Or I got my TV, I got like a whole smart home, right? So that makes life easier, but it's a double-edged sword because it could make you lazier too. But I don't have any hand controls on my vehicle or anything like that. I use adaptive cruise control. That's another form of universal design, because adaptive cruise control will kind of just run the vehicle for you, right? It'll speed up and slow down to the cars in front of you, and you just got to steer. So there's we live in a day and age now. I mean, look at like DoorDash. Look at the grocery delivery services through Prime and Amazon and Uber and all this app revolution that directly benefits the disabled community, right? So using tools like that have been big for just being able to make life, just shorten the cycle. So, maybe I'll DoorDash some food one night if I don't have the time to cook because it takes longer to do stuff like that, right? So, just using the efficiencies of the modern day is really the way I've just kind of done it, so that I have more time to play or do what I need to do.
Yeah. You said nutrition earlier. What do you do on a regular basis to keep that tight? Because I've been with you, and I know you like to indulge on some really, really good food.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I know you also talked about nutrition. Obviously, you do your best to keep your mind right and the things of that nature, which is obviously important. But to be able to wake up on time, to have energy to do what you need to do on a day-to-day basis, just like everybody does, like there's nothing different there. But what do you do to keep that right? Do you hire a service, or do you do it on your own? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a combination of things, man. I mean, like right now I'm kind of, while I'm not working an official job, I've had the time to really kind of scale out a good routine that's going to serve me well. I'm kind of laying the groundwork for something that's going to serve me well my whole life, where I'm eating, delicious food that's still nutritious, but, is convenient enough that doesn't take up your whole life to where you're going to the grocery store, then you're having to cook everything and clean up, right? Your whole life revolves around that. So it's kind of a combination, like, I've, the way I'm kind of doing it now, because I'm kind of in a cutting phase, is I'm eating like every 3 hours, smaller meals, right? So you're never like super hungry to where you're going to binge or something like that. You're eating smaller portions, but you got your macros right. You kind of figure out like, okay, I'm working out a lot more now, so I'm going to have higher proteins, have enough carbs to give me to fuel my workouts, and enough fat to, be able to process the nutrition that I'm giving myself, but not too much to where it's going to overdo it. And then I'm making meals that I like, whether they're, quick stuff like, avocado toast and eggs, or, some smoked salmon on toast or something like that, where it's quick and efficient, where I can make that for myself. And then either getting some meals that are already kind of ready to go. Like there's a place called Protein House. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but
yeah,
they're great, right? They have ready to eat stuff. There's also a spot that I've been doing a lot lately. It's called Scratch Culinary. You heard of them?
No.
They're pretty sweet, man. They are here in Tempe. For you guys, if you haven't heard of them, it's about like I'm on the 300 calorie meals, but you could get 300, 400, 500 calorie, whatever you want your macros to look like. And then they have like a rotating selection, or they have staples. And it's about $9 to $11 a meal, depending on how many calories you're getting, with a $10 delivery fee for the entire week. And so that actually and then it's all natural. They don't put no preservatives. They cook it all locally here, and then they'll drop it off at your house all ready to eat, right? And you could get bulk proteins too, if you just want to get a bunch of chicken or vegetables or starches, or
Nice.
ready to eat meals, right? So I'll kind of just rotate through stuff to find a balance on top of the routine of my life, like working out, getting up, showering, making the bed, doing all the stuff I need to do, prayer life, right? Getting my mind right, meditating and stuff like that to get ready for the day. So I've kind of just structured it in a way where, and what I learned on this last year and a half, man, is that when I've been on the road for so long, that kind of foundational stuff that we're talking about right now, nutrition, working out, sleeping regularly, like spiritual life, these things are the foundational things that allow for that adventure and for that play to take place. I don't know if you guys have heard of Maslow's hierarchy, but he was this, I think he was a psychologist or something like that, maybe a philosopher, but he had a hierarchy of like, you need to meet the basic stuff. Like you're not going to be talking about like, adventures and all this stuff when your house is on fire, right? You're playing in the pool, right? You need to get the foundational stuff, like having a roof over your head, having money in your pocket, basic needs met before you can go frolicking about the country. And so what I noticed was that when I was, running all over the place and, promoting the sport and riding everywhere, is that, a lot of that stuff began to erode, right? Obviously when you're on the road, you're not going to be eating as healthy as maybe when you're at home and you've got these different options, or sleeping at the same time, or having time to set aside for some real, like honest prayer life or meditation, or go to church, or these things that kept me grounded. So towards the end of it, man, I was just kind of feeling off, and I didn't even know why. And then when I kind of started to really like sit back and look at my life, I was like, well, dude, those foundational things are crucial. Like it's mundane stuff that none of us want to do more than we have to. But if you take it away completely and it starts to crumble, then all of a sudden it's not fun anymore. Right. And so like I kind of learned like there needs to be some sort of a sustainable basis between all of this stuff. And that's really kind of what I'm trying to focus on right now is building it from the ground up in a way that's sustainable so that I can do those things that I love and have those passions like adaptive mountain biking without like letting myself completely fall apart because I've neglected these things because I've been on the road too long, for example. So that's kind of been the focus the last month that I've been home.
That's good. Well, I think it's incredibly important to have the awareness of where are you at and recognizing, and it goes back for, obviously you said many, many years of you like always being willing to, I think it's awesome that you're always willing to ask the questions. And but here's the one thing though, a lot of people, including myself sometimes, because I might know the answer, sometimes it's a little scary to ask those questions because you might not be really wanting to hear the answers. Because some of the answers might be the mundane shit that you really don't want to do because, paying the bills and this and that aren't necessarily the funnest thing in the world. I'd rather.
Josh, can you hear me? I lost you.
All right. You there?
Okay. We're back.
Ooh, that was weird.
Yeah, it was weird. What was that last 10 seconds? Give me that again.
So basically, obviously, so that was like the generic version of it, right? Like the simple stuff, like paying the bills and stuff like that. But sometimes it's the things of, maybe it's something a little bit that has a little bit more teeth into it that you're like, man, I don't know if I want to do that. You know what I mean? So you got to be, that's why I'm saying like sometimes it's like, what is that need that you need to do that you need to address, like the big scary monster in some nature that you were talking about earlier. So sometimes people are willing to go there, sometimes you're not, but hopefully you can push through it.
Yeah, it's a blessing. A lot of times when you go through these kind of like turmoils, no one likes to go through it. No one likes to feel certain ways or have that anxiety or that depression or whatever it is. But it's a prompt. Anxiety is a prompt. It'll let you know, hey, something's off. You got to take a look at this, right? And that's why you're feeling that way. And if you're honest with yourself and you're willing to do the work, then it's kind of a blessing in a lot of ways because it makes you aware of something that you kind of maybe dismissed before, like kind of like you were saying, it's this mundane shit that none of us want to do. But when you kind of realize when it's kind of out of whack a little bit, like what the effects of the rest of the life that you think is like, well, I'm focusing on the really fun stuff. All of a sudden that's not fun anymore. And then you never thought that would have happened that way. And so this other thing that you thought wasn't that important for your attention started to kind of really make itself known. And then now you're aware that like, well, you know what? Like that's something that I have to pay attention to because it's going to really start to affect all this other stuff I care about. And then also just feeling a certain way, right? I mean, like you got to have the energy to be able to go ride a bike, right? If you're not in good shape, you're not eating right, you're not going to be able, it's hard work getting there, getting in the Jeep, pulling the bike off the Jeep, getting in it, and then doing the crazy trails and the jumps and 2-3 hours riding. I mean, that's a lot of work. You're going to be tired. So you got to have your nutrition right, your sleep right, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be fun. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So how the hell did you find this bike? Like you said, you've been riding for about 2.5 years. Like how did you find it?
That's the story, man. That's the story. It's probably the craziest thing I ever had to do in my life. And you always hear these cliches. It's always darkest before the storm, or before the light, I should say. It's always darkest before the light. You see all those memes where, the guy's digging, and he gives up right before one more little chip of the shovel would have set him free. So it was kind of one of those moments where I would have never thought going through this would have got me to where I am now, because it was kind of I almost died. So to kind of make a long story as short as possible, like when Corona happened and everything shut down, I started going out in the wilderness and pacing, and I fell in love. For those of you guys in Arizona that have been to the Mogollon Rim and Payson and all that area, it's just absolutely breathtaking. You'd never think, like, a lot of people that aren't from AZ think it's just all dry desert and boring, and like, we get our haboobs and that's the extent of like our cool stuff we experience. No, man, you go up north, it's green, it's beautiful, it's trees, rivers, mountains, everything. And I fell in love. I don't know. I just never really kind of exposed myself to that for, 30 plus years of my life. But I started going out every weekend, whether with friends or my mom or whatever, a lot of times on my own, because I just love the tranquility of being out in the woods. And since, I'm a quadriplegic, I can't really just hike into the woods, right? So I have, at that point, I only had my little, my Volkswagen Golf GTI, which is a little front wheel drive car, has no business going on any off-road anything, right? In these rugged, like, back roads and just hunting roads and random little, offshoots up in the wilderness, right? So, but that's what I had at that time. And, I was like, well, I wanted to, that's kind of how I hike. I'd go kind of deep in the woods where I could be alone, where there's not people, where it's just peaceful and tranquil. And I would just I'd get my wheelchair out, kind of use it as a walker, plop down, 10, 15 feet from the car and just sit and listen to the birds, just feel the breeze on my face, just watch the trees. And just this effect, like this 6 months of every weekend doing this, started to calm my thoughts, started to calm my inner being. My good friend of mine, Nathan, who I think was commenting on the Reverb Nation site. So thanks, bud. He told me about this concept called organic intelligence, and it's what our bodies just do naturally, where we don't need to do anything. It's kind of a natural form of meditation, where when you're just sitting out, you can do this anywhere, but in the woods or in nature, it's most easy to do because we're so distracted 90% of the time. When you just sit there, you'll just kind of realize that like your attention's just going where it naturally wants to go. You'll kind of notice those leaves, waving around in the tree in the wind, or that bird that just flew by. It'll capture your attention. And you'll notice you take like a breath in and then a breath out. And that's one cycle. So what you're doing is you're just your system's organically, naturally regulating its neurological state and calming itself down. Imagine like waves going, bo, 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 bo. And all of a sudden they start to slow and your thoughts start to calm and you don't feel as anxious and you just feel more at peace. And so back to neuroplasticity and the negative positive thought thing I was telling you about, here's that concept again. You're doing this pattern over and over again and you're regulating yourself. And so now when you go out in the real world, you're just a calmer person. Your thoughts are now more able to be your thoughts. These are your thoughts because they're more regulated. They're not these unregulated, crazy thoughts where you're lashing out on your friends or your wife or whatever because you had a bad day because you're in a heightened state of stress, right? So now you're calmer and you can actually trust those thoughts because they're calmer thoughts and they're more you, right? So I started to notice that it was amazing and I wanted more and more of that, right? And so the woods was my way of doing that. One day I went a little too deep, like crazy little hunting trail, had no business being out there on this car, and I get stuck. And it's front wheel drive and I'm backing up and I had to back up. Normally I could kind of see where I'm putting my tires, but I had to back up and I get stuck. And then I'm spinning and it's not moving. And I got no reception. I got AT&T at the time instead of Verizon. So that was the first thing I changed when I got out of there. But
I have AT&T too, so I've never had any issues, but continue.
The interesting thing is when I went back there with Verizon, I had a signal. So if I had Verizon, none of this would have ever happened and maybe I would have never found the bike. But coming back to it, I have no reception. I'm stuck. I'm honking my horn for about 4 hours until it dies. No one hears me. It's getting dark now. And I got maybe a small little, one of those like 8-ounce cups of water and like a stale pack of crackers. And that's it. And so I'm thinking, like, I could either eat this and hope someone finds me tomorrow, or it's a hunting trail. Someone might not be coming for a day, a week, who knows? Because it's not a regular trail. It's not a bike trail. It's not a hiking trail. It's a hunting trail. People might come once a day or once a week, right? You don't know. Yeah. So it's a gamble. And so I'm like, if I eat and then I'm wrong and no one finds me, I might not have the energy to do whatever I need to do to get out. whether it's crawl out or whatever. So I decided, and I had to stay the night in the car. And this was like elk mating season too. So all night, all I hear is all night. So they're like, first of all, you ain't sleeping because you're stressed as shit anyway. You're like, I might die out here. But then you hear and like all these sounds like every like 3 minutes, like, and then you don't know if a bear's coming for you or what. I mean, this is right in the middle of like, you're right by the rim, right? So it's rim country. So I like calm myself as much as I can. And that was like my come to Jesus moment. All my philosophizing, all my talking about God, in that moment, it's like, here it is. What am I going to do? Like, I have to make something happen or else I will die out here. And so the two thoughts I had in my mind is, I'm not going out like this. I've been through too much. And God, I know you're not going to give me more than I can handle. And so I'm going to find a way. We're going to find a way together. And so I try to calm myself as much as possible. And in the morning, at the first sign of light, I started to try to make my journey out there. And I came up, I had my wheelchair in the back. I used my wheelchair as a walker, put it in front of me with the brakes on. So imagine pushing a wheelchair with the brakes on over a bunch of dirt. This isn't like a trail. It's like you got like, you could twist an ankle. There's rocks, there's twigs, uneven ground. And the first thing I have to go up is this hill. This like a steep hill. So I don't even know if like I'm going to fall down, twist an ankle, and the wheelchair is just going to tumble over me. But that was the first monster I had to conquer. And the thing about something like that, your legs are just Gumby legs at that point. You're just jello. You're scared. Fear has just got a grip on you, right? You're like, if I don't make this happen, it's over, right? So little step by step. I took my cracker. I took the water. Like I take a seat. I take a sip. I take a small little bite, sit down, rest. I finally got up that hill. And that was the craziest thing ever because that hill was the hardest part of the journey. And I had to hit that right off the bat when I was most scared, most just like, what the hell? And I turn around and I look down what I just did. And the thing about fear, and this is the same thing with the hip hop show, is like, it's got you. But the only way you could overcome it, in my experience, it's not talking about it, it's not meditating about it, it's not thinking about it, it's not psyching yourself out. It's doing the thing that it says you can't do. And as soon as you do that, you look back and you're like, shit, I just did that. Okay, I got this. I'm a little more confident. Now I'm still scared, but you got a little more courage. You got a little more confidence in yourself. And about 3 hours in, I'm about halfway out. This is about a 1 mile walk. I'm taking a step every 5-6 seconds, right? Like barely, right? I'm like, you know what? I hope no one finds me right now. I need to make this out by myself for my own faith in myself, my own faith in God. And I did it. And it took 6 hours to walk a mile on this crazy road. And I finally got to the street, you know, where it wasn't a street. It was like a better dirt road with a car once every 10 minutes or 15 minutes instead of no one. And then I flag someone down. The first thing I say is, you got Verizon? And luckily they did. And I hit up my mom. That was the first person I called because I know she was just scared shitless at that point, just to reassure her, hey, Mom, I'm alive, right? Because she hasn't heard from me for 24 hours. She's calling all my friends, the cops, everything.
Holy shit.
You know, and then we had to tow the car out there. I found a guy that lived down in some village over there. He took his truck out there, tied a rope to mine, pulled it out there. But this is the story that got me the bike, because to come full circle to your question, the way I discovered the bike is when you go through something like that, you either get so scared shitless that you're never going out in the woods as long as you live, or you just get better tools. Mm-hmm. And so in my research, I finally listened to my friends, and I got the Jeep Rubicon right there, rock crawling over Sedona.
I've seen that bad boy.
And then I did the research, man, and I never even knew. I knew about road hand cycling, but I never knew that you could take a hand cycle out on the trails. And the bikes that we ride now, they're fairly new. Like there's been like off-road hand cycles for like 15, 20 years. But with motors and full suspension and throttles and everything like we have now where you're just sending jumps, that's like maybe a 5-6 year phenomenon. Like it's still in its infancy. So I didn't even know about this stuff, man. So when I found that, I'm like, wait a second. So I could do what I've been doing now, which is essentially kind of trying to hike with my car with this device that is, will allow me to have a more intimate experience with the trails, full suspension, like cranking, getting exercise, going out with my friends and hitting up all these crazy trails. Sign me the fuck up. And so I'm like, I got to make it happen. And at that point I was doing stock. So I had saved the money up for it. And I'm like, all right, I'm just doing it. And keep in mind, when you buy a bike, it's just not a bike. You're paying $20K for the bike. You got to find a way to transport it. Well, how the hell are you going to do that? This thing's freaking 8.5 feet long, weighs 100 pounds, and I'm a quadriplegic. So I had to find a guy to design a lift that was an automated lift that I could roll the bike up on there, get it up by pressing a button. Because if you got to do and jump through all these hoops after you just did a 3-hour trail ride, fuck you ain't doing that. And then you got to take it down when you get home. So no, I had to ride it up on the lift, press a button and do it by itself, still swing away to get my wheelchair in, and be able to clear the garage and have the garage closed behind it without me having to mess with it when I got home. Because that's the last thing you do after you've been riding for 3 hours and driving for 2 hours to get back home from where you came.
And I
where to ride it, right? So that was a thing.
We've been out to ride a couple of times, and I've seen you do this, and I was like, what in the hell? Like, you have it set up. Like, I've seen you try to park. I've seen you park that thing in the garage, and how close it is. Like, just like a
millimeter. If I don't crank it tight enough, it won't close.
I know. And then, like, I've seen you obviously come out. You drop that thing. You get on it. You also have, like, which I've used before. I followed you guys. I was kind of like the support system for the flag staff, and then which I've never done before. Did a ride in one place, and then get in the cars and go like an hour somewhere else to ride again the same day. But yeah, like, man, like your what you created to make that happen, and just like I'm a big dude, but like to do all that shit, holy shit. So I've seen you do it. I think it's fucking incredible.
If there's a will, there's a way, man. I mean,
absolutely.
If there's any sort of thing that this whole, we're coming in on an hour now, this whole interview leaves people with is, I mean, that's my mindset. I've gotten knocked down so many damn times in my life. But the one thing, if there's anything that defines me, it's perseverance. I'm always going to find a way. If I want something bad enough, there ain't nothing stopping me. I mean, there's nothing. And that disability in that sense, my biggest cross has at the same time been my biggest platform to stand on, because the skills that I've had to learn by having to deal with this, right? Like, I got to do what I got to do every day. It's not a choice. It's like, if you want to get up, you got to do these things. If you want to walk, you got to do these things. It's like, they ain't going to do themselves. So it's like, that's what it's come down to. And everything that I've had to do in my life, including making it out of those woods that day, has just been like, you got to man up. You got to just make it happen. And if you fall down, you get back up. If I had to crawl out of there, I had to crawl out of there, right? That's what I was thinking initially. I'm like, shit, it might take me a week to get out of here. I started doing the math from all the shows I watched on Survivor. I'm like, all right, you go a month without food, a week without water. Okay. What if I got to crawl out of here and it might take me a week? Like, it's like, you got to do what you got to do, man. And then it sucks. But by the end of this game, man, 22 years, and I have my bad days like anything, man. I was going through some tough times this last, couple months, right? With a lot of shit just going wrong. This year's been the king year of just, I drove all the way to Bentonville and I broke my bike the first pre-ride. Couldn't even race, right? I just broke my bike twice this year. I've been riding, it's been more broken than me riding this whole year. Burnout, a lot of different stuff. But you find a way, man. You find a way, and you're stronger for it if you can get out from the other side.
Yeah. Well, I think if anybody, like as you said, we're a little bit in here. Like I said, like, people, if you're listening or watching to this, I told you this is an incredible story. Like, the amount of shit this guy has gone through, and then just keeps going. Like it's inspiring. Going to the community, just the community as a whole. John Hogan asked, like, what is, because I know that you've been a leader standing up on stages and, presenting and obviously supporting, sharing the story as far as your story, but also how others can be involved. John had a question: what is the able-bodied riding community doing to communicate with the pros and companies to spreading awareness of the needs of adaptive riders? Like, obviously you're a voice of the adaptive riders, and you're pushing it as best possible. What is being done right now if somebody didn't even know about like this side of the sport?
Well, I think it's time to talk about Bentonville. I think Bentonville and the Trailblazers over there, who are a wing of the Walton Foundation, are probably doing the most right now for AMTB of anywhere that I know of. And I've been everywhere. I've talked to a lot of people. There's some that's probably as far as from the able body point of view towards the AMTB, that's the biggest thing in the form of trail design, universal trail design, just the huge amount of trails out there, the integration into the culture, the MTB culture, right? We were a part of the Bentonville Festival this year in May, right? That was that race that I was talking about that I went to, and I couldn't participate in, unfortunately, because the bike broke. But that like we were right front and center in that, right? That's everyone was that's all everyone was talking about, right? Was you see those guys flying down these trails, and we had some of the best riders in the world come out, right? We had the Bowhead boys out there, Colin Guga, just shredders, man, straight shredders. Like what people are doing on these bikes it's game changing, and the companies, they have to adapt, right? Because we're pushing the sport. I'm breaking my bike in a lot of ways because I'm pushing it, right? It's not designed to do what I'm doing, but that's the only way you're going to push these companies to adapt, right? Just like my shirt says, you have to adapt. You adapt or die. That's competition. That's life. And we've got incredible technology. I ride a Lasher. It's an amazing piece of technology. Bowhead's an amazing company that's pushing the limits harder than anyone out there right now. Just sending it. Like you go to Whistler, these guys are 20 feet up in the air. There's this guy in Australia just sent it like a 20-foot gap, just insane stuff, right? And so we're starting to make waves, and what's happening is we're getting involved in MTB festivals, in races like the Enduro up in Bentonville. They're shooting a documentary on us that's either going to be picked up by HBO or Netflix in May of 24. And that they were shooting that for the Enduro. They're going to be shooting that for the Bentonville Festival, which is kind of our own little festival, which is going to be the biggest AMTB gathering of adaptive riders anywhere in the world that I've heard of. This October 26th through the 29th. There's over 40 of us signed up. So I was trying to recruit as many of us as possible to get us all out there, all the people, all in my travels. I'm like, hey guys, you got to be in Bentonville this year. It's going to be huge, right? And not only because the riding there is awesome, not only because Trailblazers have been building awesome trails for us, they built us a special jump line specific for our bikes with the trajectory of our bikes, taking into account the physics of how our bikes tend to nosedive quicker because we can't pull back like able-bodied riders, and they're heavier, and with front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, different types of bikes, but they've been built in trails for us, right? And so now with this documentary, and the reason why we wanted to get so many people out there this year was because imagine if you're a freshly injured person sitting in a hospital bed, you just broke your neck and you think life is over. We've all been there, right? That's had a spinal cord injury, and you just don't know what the hell the next day is going to hold. And someone pops up this documentary about AMTB of 40 freaking riders shredding these trails, jumping, doing camber, doing all kinds of stuff, like hanging out, community in the Mecca for mountain biking. Like, I don't know about you, but that would get me stoked. That would get me fired up. That would give me some perspective and motivation on, hey, I want to get better. I want to get in with my PT and do my therapy and get as much function back as possible to at the very least be able to get on one of these machines and be a part of this community, right? So I think in terms of what's going on right now, and that was, that's the able-bodied community being a part of that. That's them taking up our cause and the inclusivity that's going on in Bentonville. So that's why a lot of my efforts has been put in to try to help get as many people out there, promote that event as much as I can through whatever videos I've been making, and just like, whatever I could do to get that exposure, because Bentonville's happening. And then here in our local state, we got great organizations. Todd from Epic Rides, right? Todd's awesome, right? It started with the Whiskey 50, and then from that point on, this is going to be a second year in a row putting on, an adaptive chapter as a part of his race up in the Tour of the White Mountains. And he's been awesome getting in, be able to get the cattle guard, gates, the rollover gates for those cattle guards that are out there, so that we could actually have a seamless race without having to stop and people pick us over it. That's huge, man. That's huge, right? To be able to have that so that adaptive riders could not have our own separate event. Like, this isn't, the Paralympics, right? Like, that's great. And we're going to push the sport to that too. But we want this to be a part of the whole culture. We want it to be integrated, right? So the AMTB community, the MTB community is one community. We're all there hanging out together and we're all racing, right? That's the whole point. Just like it's not about adaptive trails, it's about universal trail design, to where you cut up a few little things here, squeeze point here, little camber there, widen up this section, or create a bypass that doesn't affect the original route, but puts a feature on that bypass that's cool for able-bodied riders to want to take from time to time. That's what we're about, right? Universal trail design and full integration into the culture. And AZ's been leading the game with that, between 360 down in Phoenix and High Country up in Flagstaff. We've got 10 adaptive bikes, right? So we've got the bikes. We got organizations like Epic Rides helping us out, doing races. I had a friend send me links today about talking with some other promoters to get other races going on in here in Phoenix. You and I have talked about, if we were able to make last week, obviously we weren't able to make it, but talking to those promoters there to put races on and get adaptive chapters in there. So it's happening quick. And from my experience, the able-bodied community has been great across the board to help integrate this and bring this to the foreground and just unite the communities.
So obviously, like, I want to, like, if somebody is watching this, like, what are some of you said, obviously 360 here in Phoenix, right? High Country is up in Flagstaff. And what was, you said Bullhead out in Bentonville? Is that correct?
No, Bullhead's up in Canada. They're in BC. That's a bike builder, right? So they're
okay.
Bullhead and Lash are kind of at the top of the game in terms of the bikes.
Got it. Okay.
Trailblazers is the organization that is really been building out Bentonville. That's what I was talking about.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, dude. You and I both know I haven't been to Bentonville in general, and that's like,
you got to come
every time. I wish I could have been there in May.
This is gonna be huge. You got to be there, man. You got to find a way. We've talked about it, man. I'm not letting you off the hook on this one.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you said about, like, going back to, like, the documentary and somebody seeing the documentary and what it's all about and stuff. I told you this, but I still think about it. What's why I want to help you as best as possible. One, it's just more people on the trail, and I think that can't be a bad thing. More people enjoying it, just like you do. But my dad was passed away about a year and a half ago, but he was basically paraplegic for the most part. Like, had two of his legs underneath the knee amputated. And that happened in like 2012 was the second one. And he had diabetes and he passed. Eventually it caught up to him. But, one of the things was a challenge for him was that being able to be physically fit and to do something that he felt comfortable doing and also a little bit more safe to do. He showed me how to ride a bike. He used to ride his road bike back in the day when he was able-bodied, and then this shit came up. And I told you, like, if this was around earlier in 2015 and if it was more publicized and more popular, it might have gotten him out and actually being more physical, working on his body health-wise, because I know he would have loved this shit.
Yeah.
And if that's, and if it would have happened and he was working on his health in a different manner like you are doing right now, we might still have him around. So I have an emotional piece to this that, like, I just want, like, if I just look at my dad and diabetes and what that's taken from him, but if he had something like this to go ride and enjoy nature, like me and maybe my son, who I got into mountain biking because of him, like, we might be out riding together right now. And I'm like, that would just be fucking amazing. That would make my life. And I wish, so that's why, like, my background of why I'm passionate around supporting you as best as I possibly can is because, I mean, what it gives to somebody, I think, is incredible. And what I get out of just riding my bike is, like, it's therapy, to say the least.
It's in my travels, I met someone pretty awesome in Minnesota. His name's Bruce Martins, and the guy's just great. He's all about youth development, and he's got one of the leading youth programs in the whole United States. Like, they have a whole center where it's about riding, it's about mountain biking, it's about getting youth out on bikes, underprivileged people from communities that might not have access to resources. In my conversations with him, he mentioned something really interesting, and that when you are out there, and they did studies on this, so this is scientific, the stuff that me and you've been sharing about why mountain biking is this awesome and why it's just something that we've just been so passionate about with sharing with people, is because there's evidence to support that, and they've done a study on this, that when people are out there and their heartbeat is, I think there was a sweet spot, like 125, I think there was a number, that there's something in your brain that happens, like the way the chemistry works and the chemical is released, that you open up and your mindset shifts and your openness and willingness to share or connect, or whether it's with that environment, with the people you're with at that moment, or just share from the depths or be vulnerable, increases. And so there's an actual little therapeutic effect. And we're not even talking about the beauty of nature or being with the people that you're connecting with, or getting the exercise or the travel or the adventure of it, right? There's so many elements about mountain biking that I think lend itself to therapy, essentially, right? That why it's so important, why I'm so passionate to get my community more involved in it, because I know, and I'm speaking from personal experience, that it changes lives. And there's scientific data that supports that, right? What's actually happening in you. This isn't just like, hey, this is fun, which it is, but so hearing that, that story with your dad, you told me that before, and I appreciate you sharing that. And, that's what it does, man. That's exactly what it does, is people that, don't have a reason to go out now have a reason to go out, because those bikes are so fucking fun, dude. Just get on one. Anyone, able-bodied, disabled, doesn't matter. And I'm all about, I don't know why these bike companies, hey, Bowhead, Lasher, all you guys listening right now, or that will be listening, why aren't you guys reaching out to all communities? This shouldn't just be the disabled community. Why is this limited to people with disabilities? How about anyone? How about the elderly? How about people that are in the aging population, or people that just want to have an upper body workout in the end? People with whatever ailments, right? This should be something that is an option for anyone. And I think at that point, people always complain about price. That's how you get the price down. You expand your market. And there's no reason why you can't do that. There's no reason. The elderly population You know, they got money, man. They got retirement funds, and you ain't taking those to the grave. So there's a market right there of people, and they're not riding upright bikes at the same frequency as people in their youth, right? Because there's more dangerous.
Right.
But it's not to say that they wouldn't if they didn't have a chance to do it in a safe manner. And getting on a trike like that has an e-assist that you're not going to blow your shoulders out, but you could still get exercise and go out there with your granddaughter, grandson, or your family. Why not? Right now, you've opened up your market from a few thousand people to a few million people, several million people, right? And so I think this is something that is not just limited to people with disabilities. I think that's been kind of, I don't know why none of these companies have focused on that, but that's how you expand the sport. That's how you expand trail design and access and decrease the price. And
yeah, exactly right. Like, I love every little bit of that. And hell, let's send these clips off to them and see what they say, right? Like, get off the pot, because the fact that those bikes are $20,000 to $30,000 is, I was like, come on, man. Like, so I hear you, and if I can help you out with that in any kind of way, like, because I think you're exactly right, like, especially here in Arizona, like, let's try something out. Like, you don't need 1,000 watts like your bike does. Like, you don't need that. Like, an older person, you can trim that down a little bit, but you're still opening up maybe another market. So, there's so many options. Just being willing to take advantage of it, and at least doing some R&D. Like, try here in Arizona in the Phoenix Valley. Like, the amount of trails that we have out here that have room for that, nothing too crazy. I mean, come on. There's so many options that it could be a successful business option, and like you've been talking about, inclusivity and bringing more people into it and expanding the market. So I hear you, man.
Yeah, and on that same wave, I'm gonna give my buddy Noel Joyce a plug, because I think what he's doing with his open source program is he's trying to bring a full suspension, fully motorized, e-assisted bike to the market for about half the prices that we were talking about. And
really?
You could go and build that yourself, or I've been talking to him about some other options as well. I'm not going to get into all the details now, but I think there's going to be some really cool stuff on the horizon to bring price down. I know Bowhead's already got an entry level bike that starts at $12K. So there's some potential coming. So in grant programs for people that don't know, between Kelly Brush, like if you have a spinal cord injury, between Kelly Brush and Challenge Athletes Foundation, you could stack funds to get roughly about between those two, 10, 12K right there. So if you could get a bike down to 10, 12K or below, you could have that fully funded through grant programs here in the United States, and awesome, without anything out of pocket. So that's the goal, man. And I think if we lower the cost of this, that'll just get more people out on bikes too, because more programs will be able to have access to bikes, and more people will be able to try these bikes out. And when they like them, apply for the grants to be able to ride them. And then you start to expand the trail networks and everything, because the demand's going to drive the supply at that point. So
exactly,
a lot of exciting stuff happening.
Exactly. Well, everything that you're doing, my friend, is leading it towards it. And obviously there's groups out there throughout the country, throughout Canada, and obviously Bentonville, which is obviously huge. I think it's amazing, like everything that you're doing and the willingness to be a leader, and being willing to stand up front and really be a part of the charge with this. I think I commend you, man. Like, I think it's great. And like I said, man, I always got your back when it comes down to it. So if there's anything that you need.
I appreciate that, man. I mean, it's been as much as therapeutic for me as anything, man. And the people I've met along the way, some incredible human beings, and it's been an exciting ride, and the future's bright. Can't wait.
Future is bright. It's pretty damn cool, right? So, well, I know we're creeping up on a little bit of time here. Plus, it's been a little bit of technical difficulties lead up. So, I'm going to let you go, my friend, but I just want to say thank you for taking the time and sharing your story, being willing to. I think it says a lot about you as an individual and as a man and what you're willing to do. And obviously, like, what you've done just for yourself to be where you're at today. Like, you have a hell of a story, man. And I'm glad you're willing to share it. And you're going to inspire a lot of people. You're going to go to Bentonville. You're going to be a part of a group of individuals that are going to change a whole lot of lives, whether they're able-bodied or adaptive. I think it's really, really, really incredible with what you're doing and going after it. So I appreciate you and standing up loud and proud.
Thank you, Josh, for having me on, man. It's been great connecting. It's been great riding. We got to catch a ride. It's going to start cooling off. At least we should do a night ride up in Apache here, maybe in a couple of weeks once it gets down to the low 80s.
Please come soon.
It's going to come soon, man. It's been crazy, but let's get a ride in soon. And shout out to the community. Much love for everybody. Get out on a bike and ride adaptive.
Exactly. And if you know anybody that needs to talk to Phil or wants to know a little bit more of the community, like, make sure that you're following Phil, Quad on a Bike, watch his stories, show him some love. And maybe you know somebody that might need to meet this guy and get their eyes intrigued on what this man is doing. Because, again, mountain biking is a spark, and this could be a spark that will change their life for the better. Maybe they're down and out, or maybe they're just looking for something just as a whole. So follow Mountain Biking Life. And again, everybody here that's been following and you're watching this, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for being a part of the first Mountain Biking Life podcast. Again, thanks, Phil. I appreciate you, brother. Much love.
Man. See you guys.
Awesome.